Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble, presented by the Red Light Sports Network. I am Troy Otradovic, as always, joined by the extraordinary Evan Witallison out in the great state of Wisconsin. Evan, today is traditionally Twitter Talk, where we go out to Twitter, we ask for input from the fans to talk about their topics, and all I saw today was free agency questions. So, did free agency start?
I don't know. Good question. You know, if you asked a lot of Packer fans out on Twitter right now, the answer would be no.
Yeah, well, you know, as Packer fans, this is the way I look at it. The fan base that we have, we just like to be fair, so we're giving everybody else a head start. But all joking aside, it's been a busy 2 days in NFL. A lot of stuff, especially this afternoon. Just a lot of deals going down and a lot of activity. Really exciting time in the NFL right now. And we're actually honored to have a special guest on the show today, Evan, to talk about free agency from the player's perspective and then also give us some insight to his thoughts on where the Packers may go here in this offseason. So I'd like to welcome to the show 8-year NFL linebacker, a Super Bowl champion, and former Packer linebacker Brady Poppinga.
What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us, Brady.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we wanted to get you on today, and it's great that you're joining us because, you know, a lot of people right now are asking and wanting to find out, you know, like who's going to sign where and who's interested in who. And I thought it'd be interesting to get the, you know, a player's take on, you know, the whole free agent process. You know, I think it's a side that never gets talked about, and I thought it was a great opportunity to start. So the first question we have for you is kind of in general, what's the mindset of a player that is getting ready to embark on free agency?
Well, obviously it depends on where you're at in your career. If you're a guy that's young in the sense that you're a third, fourth-year veteran and you're going to hit the market, this is what you've really worked towards. If you've built a career, built a decent resume, I think at the very least if you've convinced at least two teams out there, heck, even one team that you're a starting caliber guy, you're anticipating getting paid and actually being able to cash in on your career at this point, knowing that this is the prime of your earnings for most guys in their NFL career. If they make it this far, I mean, most guys, to be honest, don't. And so this is the time for these guys to make, obviously, bank and to cash in on the efforts that they've put out before. And so a lot of these guys, if you're that kind of stage, you're just hoping that you at least have one team that believes in you, and if anything else, you want multiple teams, because as we all know, the more the merrier. When it comes to these kinds of things, the higher the demand, the price tag goes up.
Sure.
And so, from a player's perspective, a lot of deciding on teams comes into obviously dollars and cents is probably the biggest factor that convinces a player to stay, go, or to sign with a team. Another factor has to do with its ability to win. Another factor has to go into the coaches. Are they players' coaches? Are they coaches that jive with the potential players or the prospective players that are studying and being recruited by each and every team out there to try to sign with them? And so from a player's perspective, you're taking in a lot of information. And to be very honest, with most guys, it's just a matter of who wants them more and who shows that love to them the most through not only money but also the way they treat them and also from the conversations that they will have as to what their role will be into the future. So from a player's perspective, it's a fun time if, in fact, you are a guy that is in high demand. Now, if you're a guy that's not in high demand, it's not a fun time because it's a wake-up call, basically saying, oh, here I am in the marketplace. As we all know, the capitalistic society we live in, the marketplace ultimately sets your value. And if you're one of those guys that isn't perceived to be valuable and really isn't drawing a lot of interest, you start to question whether or not football is in your near future. And you start to question maybe if this is some a wake-up call as to, hey, I guess I'm looking for another job. Or just hopefully you get some call so you can go prove yourself again on another one-year deal and re-up and hit that free agent market maybe with a little bit more momentum. So there's a couple perspectives, and then you have the veteran guys. And the veteran guys, you know what, they just hope to get on a team, as a matter of fact, because they know that their best your earning years are done, and most of them, to be honest, if you're more looking for a situation to win, and that's why you see the Patriots who have been obviously very consistent year in and year out for a number of years in the free agent system, they love that talent pool of players who are established vets, who have made their money, and that are just looking to find a championship caliber team. And that's why you see a lot of activity with the New England Patriots take place with guys that have been around a while that are hungry for a championship.
Well, you brought up a really, really good point, and you had mentioned finding one or two teams. So I'm going to kind of take it the other way, and I know that you had a chance to go through free agency. But if you're a player, and I'll switch it over to one of those players that is in this prime, had a good year, and there's a lot of interest out on the market for him. When you're a player, Brady, do you go to your agent and do you prioritize the teams if there's multiple teams that want you and tell him, this is my first choice, this is my second? Does any of that go on when you're a player in high demand?
Of course, and that's the communication with the agent is very important, because that's the agent can only be at one place at one time, and obviously when that agent is selling you, or he is at least in conversations with other teams, you want to be able to communicate to that other team where you stand, how you can fit in, because, like I said earlier, if there's that relationship to where the team wants you, the player wants you at the same time, and they both feel comfortable with one another, the likelihood of a deal being consummated and done is at its highest level. And so you are always in communication with your agent, letting them know, hey, these are the teams that I would love to play for, and the agent, hopefully the guy knows the business side. Not all of them do, but hopefully he does. We'll sit down and say, hey, here's the situation. You know, players in your position, they need a guy like you, or they don't need a guy like you. Or if you go here, you know, if you're a linebacker, they're not going to want you to pass rush. They're going to want you to stop the run. So their contract offers aren't going to be as big. And so there is that dialogue that takes place. The agent's about putting into perspective what that means when you want to choose a team, for your career in terms of your value. And then secondly, it has everything to do with, is it a relationship that's going to fit? Is it a relationship that makes sense for you as a player? And so, yeah, that communication with the coach, the player, I should say the agent and the player is vital in this situation when you're looking to evaluate which team you want to go to if you have multiple suitors.
And you talked a little bit about what determines like where you're going to sign. And now we've seen a lot of people, a lot of the players right now have been very quick in making their choices. You know, like as of 3 o'clock Central Time yesterday, people started coming off the board quickly. Now, do players prefer to get it done and over with quickly, or would they rather wait and see and let the market settle a little bit before making that decision? Because it seems like some people are like, the first team that talks to them, boom, they're signing.
Well, here's the deal, guys. At the end of the day, negotiations have already taken place way beyond the start of free agency, and that usually takes place at the combine. The player isn't even present in most cases. In some cases, the player does come in special circumstances to reacquaint himself with the teams, or if he's having some PR issues, then he just tries to go there and let the guys know that I talk about the teams. Hey, he's a good guy, and that he'd be a high character guy. But most times, these negotiations have already happened. And it's all about money, guys. It really is. It's all about getting what you want. And basically what happens is that if you're an agent and player that have negotiated the exact deal that they are asking for, because they all have a price tag, talking about the top-tier players, whether it's Michael Johnson and he's saying, hey, I want $10 million a year, or whatever he ended up with. I didn't look closely enough at a deal. But if he gets the right team that wants to give him that, and he knows he's going to get the right role, he's going to sign with them immediately. There's no need to wait around, because he knows this. If you wait around, the only thing, it's not absolute, but what happens generally when you wait around, or if you wait too long, your price tag now starts to go down. Because you know what happens? Other guys start to get signed. And when other guys start to get signed, it's a game of musical chairs.
Uh-huh.
Basically, you could be the guy that's out there all of a sudden looks for that chair, they're all sealed, and oh, lo and behold, the price tag, if it was $10 million or whatever it had been at the beginning of free agency, now has to come down dramatically. And now instead of a multiple-year deal, you may be talking about a one-year deal. And so at the end of the day, it's about being smart from the player's perspective. It's about getting the good negotiations in the process. So when free agency hits, you do, at the beginning, get the deal that you're asking for to the right team, and then you go with it and you execute it. Because it's not, like I said, you run the risk of having the musical chairs work against you.
Sure. Hey, I'll tell you what, Evan, I like Brady a lot because as we put our questions together, he's just like you and I. He's reading our mind, answering our questions ahead of time. Just so you know, Brady, Evan and I have this thing where we kind of are on the same page, and our next question was about how much negotiating is done between the team and the agent before free agency. So thanks for answering that. And I'll kind of play off of that a little bit.
It's the majority of it.
Well,
Yeah, the majority of it. But the guys, you got to understand, guys like DeMarcus Ware, who has just hit the free agent market. Nobody thought, maybe, some maybe speculated, but nobody thought he would actually hit the market. His negotiations obviously started after he was released, which were at the same time as the beginning of free agency. But for most guys, yeah, especially the guys you sign quick, they are usually done with their negotiating by the time free agency hits.
That is a good thing, and I'm not sure a lot of our listeners understand that, how much of that really went on. And so you brought up DeMarcus Ware, which brings me into my next question. Being released, and I know, unfortunately, you had that happen with the Packers, but as a player, going through that, where's the communication? Is it coming right from the team administration, or are you getting that communication from the agent in the negotiations like, hey, we're going to have to restructure your deal, we're going to release you? Is that told right to the player, or is that coming through the agent?
It's through the agent. Usually teams, well, let me take that back. With the Packers, I don't know about most teams, but the Packers, the teams that I've been on, at least, they'll communicate directly with the player, and then it's the agent who figures out after that. But if there is a renegotiation that takes place, they will contact your agent. But most times, the solid organizations like the Green Bay Packers that are run the right way, everything goes through the player. They're going to let the player know first if they want to renegotiate. They're going to let the player know first if they want to release you or what have you, and then the agent follows suit and takes whatever action is necessary following that particular communication with the team. And I think that's how it should be. You should communicate directly with the team and such. And so, and it's part of the business of the NFL. Most guys, I think it's up in the 80th percentile of guys that will play in the NFL will eventually be released from a contract, if not their first contract, and that's just a part of the business. A very high turnover rate for these reasons we're seeing now. I mean, we saw it with Favre. In some respects, he actually did end up getting released with the New York Jets because of his own request. You get a guy like in this free agent class alone, talking about today, you got a guy like Darrelle Revis, Julius Peppers, and DeMarcus Ware, who, in my opinion, all three of those guys are potentially Hall of Fame, maybe even first ballot Hall of Fame guys that just got released. And these guys are still playing some pretty dang good football, if not still at that high Hall of Fame caliber of football, and yet they're open on the they're available on the open market.
Sure.
That just shows you the nature of the business. The nature of the business is about signing guys, about cutting guys, about releasing guys, and that is how it is from a player's perspective. You know that most likely you are going to be released. You are going to have to sign new contracts, and that's why you hire yourself an agent.
Well, before I get to my next question really quick, I just want to share with our listeners that are joining us, and I don't know if Troy's seen this yet, on Mike Neal's Twitter account, he just tweeted out, "Hi, Green Bay. I'll enjoy your winters for 2 more years." So it looks like Mike Neal is returning to Green Bay, which, we'll get to the question about him a little later, but I think that's kind of huge for Green Bay with how smooth his transition seemed to be. Now, as someone that's been involved, as a player under both CBAs, the one that was signed in 2011 and the one prior when he first came into the league, how has it changed free agency with that CBA that got signed back in 2011?
Well, actually, that one they had to cut back. The amount of money that went to the players, and the players were told that the money would eventually come back, and so there was about a 2-year dip from 2012 to last year to where there wasn't a lot of money available to players. So you saw a lot of pairing with teams, especially with the middle-range guys. The upper-tier guys like Aaron Rodgers, the Clay Matthews, were still getting paid, and they were still getting paid contracts at a perpetually growing rate. But the middleman was getting cut out a lot. And so what you saw a lot of teams turn to is this draft and develop model, which Ted Thompson obviously followed through as good as anybody, and he's been one of the big pioneers, you would say, of our era, of really making that popular, which now is starting to spread throughout the league. And so you're seeing teams be younger. You're seeing teams turn towards the draft, develop more. You're seeing teams now retain their own talent instead of letting them go out in the free agent world. And this year, the salary cap rose over $10 million. That's why you're seeing so much activity now, is because there's so much more money available to the players and for the teams to go sign new players. And so that's why this free agency, in my opinion, compared to the last two free agencies, has actually been pretty entertaining, and there's been a lot of action because there's more money available to players. But in the first 2 years of the new CBA deal, the players got squeezed, and because of that, the teams had to make some pretty difficult situations of cutting some guys, restructuring other guys, and trying to just make it through these 2 years to where they knew the cap would then get up to a point where they could operate like they did pre-2011. So now I'd say this year things are back to what they were before this new CBA was signed, and I think you're going to see both the players and the owners in both very good positions as the game continues to grow and develop, not only on the business side when you're talking about revenues, but also in terms of popularity on a global scale.
Now, looking at the big money contracts that have been being thrown out, as you were saying, more money's going back to the players now. Now, is this going to be a trend for the next number of years with these large contracts like Jerry's Bird with the Saints and DeMarcus Ware today with that $20 million guaranteed in that 3-year deal? Are we going to see more of those contracts coming out now?
I'm sure they're going to continue to grow as the not only the players demand that kind of money, but also as the teams make more money, which they will with the new TV deals. I'm not exactly sure on the specifics of that, but they will kick in even soon enough, and I think within the next 1 or 2 years, and that even will inject more money into the teams to be able to pay players, and the players are going to ask for that, and it's part of the deal that the teams are going to have to pay I think 90% out of cash, not cap dollars. There's two different things in cash to the players. Yeah, the contracts are going to go up, players are going to make more money, and the owners, hey, don't feel sorry for them. They're going to be making exponentially a lot more money themselves, and so it's just, again, it's a function of the popularity of the NFL. I mean, you saw this last year in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, the visibility, the viewership were at all-time highs, and they keep almost re-breaking records that they established year in and year out because of the popularity that the NFL has, not only in the United States, but I think the popularity of the NFL is becoming a global popularity. Not to say that it's going to take over soccer in the next 5 years, but I'm saying it is starting to now make a dent. And I know for specifics, guys, you know why? Because this last offseason I did for the first time I made history with Fox Deportes, and we transmitted in Spanish the playoffs and Super Bowl to the United States, to the Latin American community, into the United States of America for the first time. So we did a full-blown production. And the viewership numbers that we had by more than 5 times outdid the predictions and the projections of the Fox stations of what the viewership would have been. And that's just in the Latin culture.
Wow.
So you're going to see a lot more on a global scale start to really be drawn to the NFL, because I think they're realizing not only it's similar to soccer, because if you think about it, football is a derivative of soccer. A lot of the same concepts. We talk about 22 players on the field itself, having to have the ball cross a certain goal to score points instead of it being kicked. Now it's being carried or thrown in the NFL versus soccer. But now they're seeing, hey, in soccer, you're going to have maybe 6 really exciting plays, which are goals, and that's on a good day. Whereas in the NFL, you can have sacks, interceptions, big returns, big interceptions, big pass plays. You can have 20 to 30 huge, exciting plays throughout the duration of an NFL game. That just makes the game more exciting. And as a matter of fact, guys, I talked to he's a top-tiered soccer player in Mexico. You probably compare him with like a guy like, Kabir Bajabia-Mila, of the soccer league down there in Mexico. And I was interviewing him. His last name's Garcia, one of those kind of common black names. But I asked him, I said, as you start to follow American football more, what do you find more exciting? The soccer that you've come to love and mastered in terms of the game, or American football? And he actually said, I have to make exceptions. He says, I think American football is by far more exciting than soccer. So as to my point of it being more of a global game and that making it to where now they're going to have more inflow of money, I think that's only going to grow over time as other parts of the world, such as Europe. Obviously, London's become big fans of the game itself. You'll see this spreading into Africa and other areas where soccer is big, that I think they'll eventually take to the American game of football itself. So I think the game of the NFL is only going to grow, and it's going to go fast.
Well, I would agree with you, Brady, and I know you probably don't know my background. I was a soccer player, a soccer coach, and I think you gave us a little bit more credit than necessary. I'd like to try to find those 6 exciting plays in a soccer game. That's coming from a player and a coach, but you're absolutely right. It's just the scoring plays that are usually exciting from the fan. But, it is one of those things where I can't disagree with you. The NFL has grown so much. And I know I'm going to get off topic here, but it just came to my mind as you were talking about the expansion worldwide, and I know it came up in the offseason about expanding overseas. Is that a real viable option for the NFL to be able to have a team in London or overseas? Do you see that working if it would happen?
I think it could. It would take some creativity, though. It would take creativity. I think the most important end would be scheduling, because I don't think you would ever want to have a team, let's say, for example, the Seattle Seahawks. Let's say there's a team in London. You'd never want the Seattle Seahawks to have to travel all the way across country, play that team in London, or across the world halfway, play that team in London, fly back to Seattle, and then maybe have to play a Thursday night game, or do it on a Monday night. It's possible, but I think logistically, creatively, the NFL is going to have to be, somewhat on their A game in that respect, to where you're not going to want to kill teams in terms of making them travel long distances and then having to back that up with games that are on short weeks and things of that nature. But I think they could pull it off. I think there's a viable option there in London, especially with the teams that you got in the NFC, AFC East, all the East Coast teams. I think you could add a team that in that one of those two conferences and one of those two divisions, to where the travel isn't so bad. And I think it could be an option that is it's viable, and I think it's all going to come down to when they're ready to pull the trigger on that. When you talk about the league and its willingness to expand, but I mean, being a guy who lives in Southern California, I don't see why they don't expand down and tap to the Southern California area more, tap into a very passionate fan base of football fans here in Southern California. So, by the way, Southern California produces some of the best football talent in the United States of America. Not a lot of people know that. And so my point is I think expansion is on the horizon. I think it is viable to go to a place like London, and I think here in the next 10, 15 years, you're going to see that.
Wow.
Now, looking at the time we have left, I just want to spend we have about just under 8 minutes to go. Let's, talk about, Packers a little bit. You're, familiar with the scheme that they're running, familiar with Capers, Thompson, and McCarthy. Looking at the Packers and, the reason why they've bowed out of the playoffs the last couple of seasons, their defense has struggled at times. What is your thoughts that the Packers need to do this offseason other than just re-sign their own guys to improve that defense? And what do you think Thompson's actually going to do?
Well, I think Thompson is going to do what I think. This is what I think, and I'm going to say it basically under the title of that. I think this is what he's going to do, Ted, anyway. And that is, obviously, he's going to keep his own guys, like you just mentioned, Mike Neal, just re-upped with them. He played outside backer last year, but I think his real true position in that scheme is actually as a five technique. I think that's where he is at his best. And I think what you're going to see, I think, Ted, what he's going to do is he's going to continue to wait out the free agent period, and he's going to let it get to the point where things simmer down, all this excitement, all this frenzied pace really comes down to where his pace is, because you've seen Ted or talked to Ted. He's not a high energy guy. He's not overly frenzied in the way he operates. He's very, very methodical and very patient. He likes to take his chances when they're very calculated, and that's what he's going to do at free agency. What I think he's going to do is, I think on the defensive side of the ball, he's going to inject some competition there, and I think that's where they've lacked. They have so many young guys, and these young guys have developed, but you know what? They've only developed to a certain point, and some of these young guys, because of the lack of a veteran presence, I think, have been thrown in there with that starting title above their name without having to earn it. And so you see, I think, a little edge off of that defense that needs to be there for them to really be a defense that people are going to look at and say, wow, this is a defense we got to prepare for. Because right now, they don't scare anybody. Right now, you look at a game against San Francisco last year, and I'm not going to just say Jared Bush is the reason why they lost, but you look at that blitz with Jared Bush. He went inside when, in fact, he should have stayed outside to contain Kaepernick. Kaepernick broke contain, got the first down. I think it was a 3rd and 12, and ended the game essentially on that one play. But if they would have executed that blitz just by having Bush go the outside, Kaepernick sacked, and I think the Packers go on to win that game, and who knows what happens after that, as we all know within the momentum during the playoffs we all learned in 2010. My point is this. Bush going inside, that kind of stuff usually happens on a team that just doesn't, on a collective sense, have enough leadership, doesn't have enough edge. enough of this competitiveness to where guys feel like, hey, I can't afford to do that. I can't afford to make that crucial of an error and think I'm going to still be on this team and play. And that's going to come from internal competition. And there's not a better example of what internal competition does than if you look at the Seattle Seahawks. That's how they are built, and guess who they got the idea from? John Schneider, who learned it from Ted Thompson. Ted knows as good as anybody that defense, especially the Green Bay Packer defense, needs more internal competition than it ever needed. And the best way he's going to be able to pull that off is not only by re-signing his guys and having his young guys develop, but he's got to interject some talent from the free agent pool, some veterans who have some stripes to them that can bring a little bit of credence, leadership, help guys like Clay out, help guys like AJ out, those guys that have been the leaders of this defense for a number of years now. And basically, there needs to be more internal competition, and that needs to be elevated, and that's going to happen through bringing in some veteran free agents. I'm not saying he's got to go break the bank, but he's just got to find some hungry guys that have that attitude. They want to prove themselves, bring them in, and let them go compete with these younger guys like Nick Perry, like the Wordleys, like Dante Jones from last year. Those are the guys that right now are feeling very comfortable, that need a little fire lit up under them, and the best way to do that is bringing guys at their same position or veterans who can play, who have shown they can play at a very reasonable price. And you're going to see one of those three guys look to that competition, respond to it, and they'll emerge and be a big-time player for that Packer defense. You'll see the Packer defense play better, too. So the internal competition is where it's at, guys, and I think that's exactly what Ted's going to do. He's going to stoke that fire by signing some very inexpensive but yet solid players on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, and there's a number of players out there. We were talking yesterday, and you know, the one thing, Brady, I saw today, too, M.D. Jennings was signed by the Chicago Bears, and I called our safety play a little bit horrific. I know you were a player, but it kind of like what you were saying, they looked real comfortable, and it just didn't seem like there was what you mentioned, a leadership. Nobody was taking the leadership control, and it just looked like we were always a step behind, or like you said, Bush going inside when he should have stayed outside. And I know, Evan, when we recapped that game, we had mentioned that play on our recap. And when you look at those things, there's a lot of those players out there, and I call them the Tier 2 type free agents that I think Ted can bring in to really help our team out. Where do you think he's going to go in the draft? I know that we have a lot of holes to fill on defense, but you know, with your knowledge of the NFL and looking at the Packers, what do you see the concentration being on in the first couple rounds of the draft for the Packers this year?
Well, obviously Ted's going to take the best guy available, but he considers the best guy available. But obviously, if he's got a quarterback and let's say a higher position of need, which I say a big time position of need for them is going to be defensive line, outside backer, and safety or corner, and those are going to be the number one positions for them right now. And so, obviously, if you get a quarterback and an outside backer, let's say, that fall to their position, what position are they drafting again? I forget.
21st.
The Packers.
21.
So let's say they get a guy like that falls. Yeah. Let's say they get a quarterback and the defensive line that's a projected outside rusher, like a Barr, like a Kyle Van Noy that's out of BYU, who I know really well. Khalil Mack out of Buffalo.
90 seconds.
Fall to the Packers, man. If he did, that would be a heck of a compliment to Clay.
Oh, that'd be great.
You get one guy like that who's graded out as the same as a quarterback, he's going to pull the trigger on the defensive guy because he understands. He knows his offense is as good as an offense as there is out there when Aaron's under center. When Aaron's not under center, that's a whole different topic. But my point to you is this: he's going to go defense again, I believe, and he's going to go with who he feels is the best, whether it's a corner, whether it's safety, anybody. Whoever he has is the highest-rated defensive
60
player.
seconds.
As long as he is on the same level as some offensive players, because don't get me wrong, Ted's not afraid to pull the trigger and stack up the wide receiver position again. Or he's not afraid if there's a sweet offensive lineman that comes falling to his lap at that position, he's not going to go in that direction either. But I think if he had his druthers, and he's again, you got to understand, Ted is a very disciplined general manager. This guy does not operate through emotions. This guy does not operate through fear or through being impatient. He operates through a system. He's very principally based. And so when he gets the right guy that lands into his lap, he's going to pull the trigger on him. Now, if he gets the right kind of situation, what I think he's anticipating, because he's going to have, he has his own projections of how he feels like the draft's going to go, although there will be surprises. Nobody ever knows everything. But if it goes according to what he thinks, I think he'll want to choose a defensive player.
10 seconds.
I wish we could have you on even longer, because I'm sure we could probably talk for hours on that. And just a heap of knowledge to bring onto the show. So just want to thank you for coming on and taking the time out of your busy schedule to join the show. And I would love to have you on some other time too.
It is my pleasure, guys, and anytime I can reconnect with the Packer fan base and those associated with the Green Bay Packers, I will take advantage of that opportunity every single time.
Well, we're gonna.
So, hey, follow me on Twitter at Brady Poppinga. You know where to find me. I am more than willing to share my opinions and insights there too. So,
yeah,
guys.
We're already on top of that, and we're going to hold you to that. We're gonna invite you back, especially near Packers season, and get your insight. But again, too, from myself, Brady, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We know you got a lot of things going on. Hope the listeners enjoyed everything today. So we'll get back at you soon, buddy.
All right, take care, guys. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Well, with that said, Evan, it was a great show having Brady Poppinga on to give his insight, players' perspective on free agency. Hopefully that filled our listeners in a little bit on what a player's thinking as they're going through this time and this process, and also giving us some insight on Ted Thompson. And as you saw and heard him say, I know we're not on live anymore, but let's just spend maybe a couple minutes, Evan, recapping what Brady Poppinga had said. This is falling right into what Ted Thompson wants to do. He's not gonna go off the cuff. He's not gonna jump out there and break the bank. That's coming straight from a player who played in the organization. So, what did you take from that? I mean, it seems like it's fallen right into line, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's what he does every offseason. If there's somebody out there, as we saw after the 2011 season, Thompson signed a few guys. A lot of them ended up getting cut towards the end of training camp, but Thompson did sign a few guys, during the 2012 offseason. If the players are out there that he thinks is going to give some, and the key word he used was internal competition. If he feels those guys are out there, then he's going to bring them in. But he's not going to spend his money just to spend it. And I think that's a key thing to take out of what he was saying, is Thompson's not going to panic and spend the money just because he's got it. He's going to be methodical, and he's going to wait till things settle down, and he's going to bring guys in that not only fit what the Packers are trying to do from a scheme perspective, but he's going to bring guys in to bring up internal competition. And he didn't do that this past offseason. And we all saw what happened after, Bill Michaels on the Bill Michaels show today brought up that Minnesota Viking game. That is a game where the wheels fell off the defense. After that game, the defense started to fall apart, and I could, thinking back on it, I could see exactly what he was talking about, is they didn't really have a lot of internal competition, and they tried a little bit later in the year, I believe, with getting Boyd on the field more in place of Pickett or Dayton Jones, and then trying to get Worthy on the field. They tried doing it later in the year, but they have to do it during the off season, during training camp, bring in some of that internal competition to light a fire under these guys.
Well, I thought that was a great comment by Brady Poppinga about the internal competition, because you can't disagree. He hit it right on the head that we got a lot of young guys and they just felt comfortable, and they need to have that competition to know that mistakes are not going to be okay. There's going to be somebody that's going to step on the field and do your job if you don't do it right. I thought it was a great point, and I was smiling over here, Evan, when he talked about the Jarrett Bush play, because you and I talked about that exact same play when we recapped. And so I couldn't help but agree with him about the competition, like you're saying. And I think you brought it up yesterday. We've been talking about it. Ted Thompson is being Ted Thompson, and I think the fans got all worked up over Ian Rappaport's article that he was going to be more aggressive. Well, I think he's going to be more aggressive based on the comments we heard today, that he's going to add a number of players to really beef up the competition, but he's not going to go spend $10 million on somebody to eat up a third of his salary cap room. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, he's not going to bring in a guy that's going to eat up a huge part of the cap, and he can't bring in guys that are going to bring in eat up huge parts of the cap, because he has Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb that are entering final years of their contracts, and he's got to try to extend those two, and they're going to take up a big portion of the cap. So I personally think Thompson does it the right way. The teams that are throwing all that money around yesterday and taking up big portions of their cap, with the exception of the Broncos, most of those teams, what do they have in common every year?
Yeah, they lose.
Think about it. What do those teams mostly have in common every year other than Denver?
Yeah, they lose. They're losers. I hate to say that.
They don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I hate to say it that bluntly, but they're near the bottom of the NFL. But I'll tell you what, buddy. Got all worked up having Brady Poppinga on the show, and we're about 6 minutes over the live show, so we should probably let the listeners go. But I could sit here and talk all night about this. Now I'm jacked up. But why don't you let the listeners know what we got going on tomorrow?
Well, we have Dave Radcliffe joining us tomorrow to talk Wisconsin Badger basketball. The Big Ten tournament starts tomorrow, and we're going to talk to him to see what the likelihood is of Wisconsin getting possibly getting a 2 seed, and do they still have a shot at a 1 seed? That's something that we're going to talk to Dave about tomorrow. The Big Ten tournament's going to be underway when we talk to him, but the Badgers have a first-round bye. So I don't know if we're going to know who the Badgers are going to play yet by the time we talk to Dave, but it's going to be a great conversation tomorrow. And, barring something, a guest coming on or something else, I'm sure we're going to talk free agency, once again on Friday, because I know we did have a couple questions from some listeners regarding the Seahawks and the Giants. So we're going to try to get to those on Friday. So, keep listening. We're going to get to your topic.
And with that said, everyone, hope you enjoyed the show today. I know he's not on the line anymore, but I do want to thank Brady Poppinga for joining us today. Former Packer, Super Bowl champion. It was a great talk. Like he said, he loves connecting with the fan base. Go out, follow him on Twitter. It's simple. It's at Brady Poppinga. Go find him. He's on Evan's timeline. He's on my timeline. Go out and follow the guy. He's a great ambassador to Green Bay Packer football. We loved having him on the show. With that said, everyone, we'll catch you at the next red light. We'll get back at you tomorrow.